My name is Nick, and a couple of weeks ago, I installed a security camera at my front door. It wasn't paranoia or anything. I just wanted some extra safety. You hear about break-ins, package thieves, weird people knocking at odd hours. I figured a camera would give me peace of mind. The first night after installing it, I was already in bed when my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I frowned. It was late past midnight. Maybe just a cat or a car's headlights triggering the motion sensor. I unlocked my phone and opened the app. What I saw made my breath catch in my throat. A man in a black hoodie stood directly in front of my door, staring straight into the camera. His face was mostly hidden under the shadow of his hood, but I could see his mouth, tight-lipped, expressionless. I sat up, my heart thudding. He didn't ring the doorbell. He didn't knock. He just stood there. I watched the live feed, waiting for him to leave. 5 minutes passed, then 10. He didn't move. He just stared, his head tilted slightly, like he was listening to something. Then, without warning, he stepped forward and knocked. 3 slow, deliberate raps. Knock, knock, knock. I flinched. My gut told me not to answer. Instead, I crept out of bed and tiptoed to the front door, pressing my eye against the peephole. No one was there. I hesitated, then opened the door just a crack. The porch was empty. The street was quiet. I even stepped outside, scanning the sidewalk and my yard. Nothing. No footsteps leading away. No sound of retreating footsteps. Just stillness. I shut the door quickly, double-checking the locks. My pulse was still racing when I climbed back into bed. But eventually, exhaustion won out, and I drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning, I told my neighbor Greg about it. I was up late, he said, sipping his coffee on his porch. Didn't see anyone. I shook my head. The camera caught him. I saw the footage. Greg frowned. Might have been a glitch. Those things mess up sometimes. I didn't like that answer. When I got back inside, I pulled up the saved recording. My hands were sweating as I pressed play. The video started normally. The hooded man stood motionless at my door, just like I remembered. Then, when he finally stepped forward and knocked, something caught my eye. His hand. It moved, but there was a blur, like a lag in the video. His whole arm looked disjointed, like it wasn't fully connected to his body. I rewound the footage, playing it again. That's when I noticed something worse. His face. I hadn't paid much attention to it before because of the hood's shadow, but now I saw it clearly. He looked exactly like me. Same jawline, same nose, same stubble, but something was wrong. His eyes dark, hollow pits. His mouth stretched too wide in a smirk that wasn't human. My stomach twisted. I slammed my laptop shut and turned off the security app. That night, I refused to check the camera. I told myself it was just a weird distortion, a trick of the light. But then, at exactly 12:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I clenched my fists, forcing myself not to look. Then, knock, knock, knock. Slow, rhythmic. I gritted my teeth, frozen in bed. My chest felt tight, my breathing shallow. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence. Maybe just some kids messing around. But then my phone buzzed again. Motion detected, back door. My blood turned to ice. I don't have a backdoor camera. I hesitated, then opened the app. The screen flickered. The video feed glitched, the static warping the image into something barely comprehensible. Then, for just a moment, the video cleared. A face stared into the camera. My face. But it wasn't me. The thing had my features, my build, but its head twitched unnaturally, and its grin was so wide it looked like the skin would split. It pressed its hands against the camera lens, tilting its head as if it could see me through the screen. Then the screen went black. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I uninstalled the camera system. I threw the whole thing away. Greg saw me doing it and chuckled. Guess it was glitching after all. Huh? I forced a smile. But deep down, I knew. It wasn't a glitch. It was something else. And now it knows what I look like. I didn't sleep the night after I threw the camera away. Even without the app, without the footage, I felt something watching me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face. My face, twisted into something that wasn't quite human. At some point, exhaustion won. But then, knock, knock, knock. My eyes shot open. I lay frozen in bed, my heart hammering. The sound came from the front door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks, exactly like before. I grabbed my phone out of instinct, but there was no notification. No security camera to tell me what was outside. For a long moment, I just listened. Silence. I exhaled shakily and climbed out of bed. The air in my house felt heavier than usual, thick with something I couldn't name. I crept toward the front door, every step slow, careful. The peephole was right in front of me now. I hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, I leaned in and looked through. Nothing. The porch was empty. The street was quiet. Still, the feeling of being watched didn't leave. I stood there for a long moment, my pulse thudding in my ears. Then, trying to shake off the nerves, I turned away. That's when I heard it. A soft, scratching sound. I spun back toward the door. The sound came from the other side. No, fuck this. I stepped backward, heart racing. My phone was still clutched in my hand, but I didn't know what to do. Call the cops? And tell them what? That something was scratching at my door like a stray animal? Then, just as suddenly as it started, the noise stopped. I waited. 1 second. 2, 3. And then, knock, knock, knock. A choked breath left my throat. I didn't move. But then I heard something worse. Something whispering my name. Came from inside the house. I turned, my body stiff with terror. The hallway leading to my bedroom was dark, the shadows stretching too long, like something was standing there. My phone buzzed. A notification. Motion detected, front door. My breath hitched. No, that's not possible. I unplugged the camera. I threw it away, but the app was still installed on my phone. And the notification was real. I didn't want to look, but I had to. Slowly, with shaking hands, I tapped the screen. The live feed loaded. The porch was empty. But the door, the one I was standing right in front of, was slightly ajar. And through the crack, I could see an eye staring back at me. An eye that looked exactly like mine. I dropped my phone. My body moved before I could think, slamming the door shut and locking it. I stumbled backward, gasping for breath. The air was thick, suffocating. My limbs felt weak. Then, the phone buzzed again. Motion detected, living room. I stared at the screen, dreading what I would see. The video was dark, grainy, but there was movement. A figure stood in my living room, half hidden in the shadows. Not outside, inside. And when it stepped forward, the porch light from the open front door cast just enough light to reveal its face. My face, grinning. The screen flickered, glitched. Then the video feed cut to black. The last thing I heard before my phone died was a whisper. Let me in. I don't remember falling asleep. At some point, exhaustion must have pulled me under, because when I woke up, sunlight was pouring through the windows. For a moment I thought maybe it had all been a nightmare. Then I saw my phone lying on the floor where I had dropped it. The screen was cracked, but that wasn't what made my stomach clench. It was the motion detection notifications. There were at least 50 of them. My hands trembled as I picked up the phone, dreading what I would see. The app was still open, frozen on the last recorded frame. A still image from my living room camera. Except I didn't have a camera in my living room. And yet, there it was. The grainy image showed the couch, the coffee table, the hallway leading to my bedroom. And him, me, standing in the center of the room. His head was tilted at an unnatural angle, the same twisted grin stretching across his face. His eyes were entirely black now, hollow voids where my own should have been. But the worst part? He wasn't looking at the camera anymore. He was looking at me, at the exact spot where I had been sleeping. I launched the phone across the room. It hit the wall with a dull thud and clattered to the floor. My chest was heaving, my breath coming in ragged gasps. What the hell was happening to me? I staggered to my feet and grabbed my car keys. I didn't care where I was going. I just had to get out. Get away from my house, from my phone, from that thing. I yanked open the front door, stepping outside, and stopped cold. Package was sitting on my doorstep. It hadn't been there the night before. I swallowed hard, my throat dry as I crouched down to look at it. There was no return address, no label, just a plain brown box. My fingers hovered over the lid. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to leave it alone, to run. But I had to know. Slowly, I peeled back the tape and opened the box. Inside was my security camera, the same one I had thrown away. But something was different. The camera lens was cracked. The casing was dented, like it had been crushed. And beneath it was a single sheet of paper. For words. "You can't block me." I dropped the box, my breath coming in panic gasps. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely think. This wasn't just a prank. This wasn't a glitch. It was real. I spun around, scanning the street, the sidewalks, looking for him. Nothing. But the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. I grabbed the box and burned it. Every piece of it. The camera, the note, everything. Then I packed a bag and left town. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I ditched my phone on the highway. I just drove, trying to put as much distance between myself and whatever the hell was following me. For the first few nights, I slept in motels. The air felt lighter. The paranoia eased. I started to believe I was finally safe. Then last night, knock, knock, knock. I sat bolt upright in bed, my breath catching in my throat. I was in a different town, a different state. No one knew I was here. I didn't move. Then my new phone buzzed. Motion detected, front door. I swallowed hard and opened the app. The screen flickered, static warping the image into something barely visible. But I saw enough. A figure stood outside my motel room door. Not just any figure. Me. I shut the app, turned off the phone. But I knew it wouldn't matter. Because somehow, no matter where I go, he's going to find me. My name is Jason, and I live alone in a small house just outside the city. It's nothing fancy, but it's quiet, and that's all I really need. A couple of weeks ago, I had to leave town for a 3-day business trip. Since I live alone, I decided to set up a security camera inside the house. Just a cheap one with motion detection that connects to my phone. I figured it would be good for peace of mind. I never expected to see something that would make me question reality itself. On the first night of my trip, I was lying in my hotel bed when my phone buzzed. Motion detected, living room. My stomach dropped. It was almost 1 a.m. No one should have been in my house. Maybe it was a glitch? A shift in the lighting? Still, my hands were shaking as I opened the security app and pressed play. The footage was grainy, but I could see my living room clearly: couch, coffee table, TV. Nothing seemed out of place at first. Then something moved in the hallway. A shadow. It drifted slowly across the room, just at the edge of the camera's view. I sat up in bed, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The figure wasn't walking, it was gliding, like it wasn't touching the ground. And then, as it passed directly in front of the camera, it stopped. Turned toward me. For a moment, the footage glitched. The screen crackled with static, warping the image. And then, for just a split second, I saw its face. Or at least I think I did. Because it didn't have one. Where the eyes, nose, and mouth should have been, there was just a smooth, featureless blur. I felt sick. My body broke out in a cold sweat. I rewound the footage. The figure appeared out of nowhere. One frame, the hallway was empty. The next, it was just there. I turned up the volume. No footsteps. No sound at all. Then the screen flickered again. The video cut off. A second later, I got another notification. Motion detected, bedroom. I froze. The bedroom camera was the one facing my bed. I was hundreds of miles away, but just the thought of seeing something in there made my stomach churn. I hesitated before tapping on the footage. The video loaded, and at first it was just my empty bed. The blankets were neatly made, the room exactly as I had left it. But then the closet door creaked open. Slowly, deliberately, I stopped breathing. A dark shape began to emerge from inside. The video glitched again, static distorting the image. When the feed returned to normal, the closet door was wide open, and the shape was gone. Panicked, I grabbed my phone and called 911. "There's someone in my house," I said, my voice shaking. The dispatcher asked if I could see them now. I told her about the footage. She said officers were on the way. I stayed on the line, staring at my phone. The security feed was still open. I expected the figure to come back. Instead, something else happened. The bedroom camera tilted slightly, as if something was moving it. My blood went cold. That wasn't possible. The camera was mounted, fixed in place, and yet, it was turning slowly, deliberately, until it was facing the doorway, like it was watching for someone to enter. The officers arrived 15 minutes later. I watched through the app as they moved through my house, flashlights scanning each room. "Sir, there's no one here," one of them told me over the phone. I swallowed hard. "Did you check the closet?" "Yeah, empty." I exhaled shakily. "Was the door open when you got there?" "No," the officer said. "It was closed." My stomach twisted. I asked them to check the security camera. They picked it up and examined it. "It's mounted just fine," one of them said. "It can't move on its own." I didn't know what to say. Before they left, they told me there were no signs of forced entry. No windows broken. No footprints. Nothing was stolen. Nothing was disturbed. And yet, I knew something had been in my house. And worst of all, when I rewatched the last few seconds of footage, I noticed something terrifying. As the officers were leaving, the camera glitched one last time. For just a single frame, something stood behind them. Something tall. Something featureless. And as soon as the door closed behind them, the closet door creaked open again. I didn't go home after the police left. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it had to be a glitch, a shadow, a mistake. But deep down, I knew better. Something was in my house, and it was waiting. I booked another night at my hotel. I kept the security app open, watching the cameras obsessively. For hours, nothing happened. No motion alerts. No strange figures. But then, at 3:12 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected, bedroom. My stomach clenched. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the notification. Then I tapped the screen. The feed loaded, and at first, everything looked normal. The room was still. The closet door was shut. But then I saw it. The blanket on my bed shifted. Like something was underneath it. A shape began to rise, slowly, unnaturally, stretching the fabric upward, as if something was sitting up. I turned up the volume. No sound. I could barely breathe. The shape kept rising, taking on the outline of a human form beneath the covers. Then the screen glitched. For a fraction of a second, the image distorted, lines of static twisting the feed. And when it cleared, the blanket was flat again. Nothing there, like it had never moved at all. I was frozen, staring at the screen, trying to process what I had just seen, when my phone buzzed again. Motion detected, bathroom. I felt sick. I didn't have a bathroom camera. But the app was registering a new feed. A live feed. Hands shaking, I tapped on it. The screen flickered. Then I saw it. The footage showed my bathroom mirror. The reflection of the sink. The door. And me. Standing there. But I wasn't in my house. I was in the hotel. So, who the hell was that? I stared at the screen, my pulse hammering. The me in the video was standing completely still. Too still. Like a mannequin. Then, in a single, unnatural movement, my reflection's head snapped sideways. Like it was looking at the camera. Looking at me. I dropped the phone. My entire body was shaking. I grabbed my second phone, my work phone, and dialed my friend Mark. He was the only person I knew who lived nearby. "Dude," I said, my voice unsteady. "I need a favor. Can you check my house? I think someone's inside." Mark was confused, but he agreed. I stayed on the line as he drove over. When he pulled into my driveway, he muttered, "Your lights are off." "They should be," I whispered. "I'm not there." "All right," he sighed. "I'm going in." I switched back to the security feed, watching as Mark unlocked the door. The living room was empty. The hallway was empty. Then he stepped into my bedroom. "The closet door is open," he muttered. My heart was pounding. I stared at the feed. Everything looked normal. Then, the screen glitched. For a single frame, I saw it. Something was standing behind him. Tall, faceless, waiting. And before I could scream, the feed cut to black. "Mark," I whispered into the phone. Silence. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. The security feed was dead. Just a black screen. No signal. I squeezed the phone, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Mark, are you there?" A long pause. Then, "Yeah." His voice was strange. Flat. I swallowed. "Are you okay?" Another pause. Then the sound of footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. The phone crackled. I think you should come home, Jason." Something about the way he said it made my stomach drop. I pulled the phone away from my ear and checked the call time. He was still on the line. But the security feed, the last thing I had seen was something behind him. I forced myself to stay calm. "Mark, get out of the house." Silence. Then the sound of breathing. And in a low, unnatural voice, he whispered, "You left the door open." The call cut off. I stared at my phone, cold terror washing over me. I should have called the police. Should have done something. Instead, I grabbed my keys and ran for my car. The drive home was a blur. I didn't even remember the turns. All I could think about was Mark, and the thing standing behind him. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the house was dark. Too dark. The front door was wide open. I hesitated. The air was thick, heavy, wrong. Every instinct told me to turn around. But I stepped inside anyway. The house was silent. Then I saw it. Mark's phone, lying face up in the hallway. The screen was cracked, but still on. A message was open. A text he had tried to send me. It only said one word. "Run." I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then, a soft creak came from my bedroom. I turned my head slowly. The closet door was open, and something was inside. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification. Motion detected, living room. I barely had time to react before the screen on Mark's phone glitched. For a split second, the reflection in the screen changed. It wasn't me anymore. It was something featureless. Something smiling. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I reached my car. I fumbled with the keys, throwing myself inside, locking the doors. Then I forced myself to look back at the house. In the window, a figure stood there, watching me. Not Mark. Not me. Something else. It lifted one hand and waved. The last thing I remember is my own scream. I never went back. The police found nothing. No mark. No footprints. Nothing. But the security app? Still installed on my phone. And every night at 3:12 a.m., I get a notification. Motion detected, bedroom. I never open it, because I know what I'll see. And I know it's waiting. My name is Chris, and I restore old CCTV footage for the police. Most of my work is dull, enhancing blurry license plates, cleaning up audio, and scrubbing through hours of uneventful security camera recordings. But a few weeks ago, I was given a case that still haunts me. It started with an old hard drive, labeled Apartment 305, 2013. I loaded the footage and pressed play. The black and white recording showed a dimly lit hallway outside an apartment building. The camera angle pointed directly at the door of Apartment 305. For the first few minutes, nothing happened. Then, at 11:47 p.m., a man appeared. He wore a jacket and jeans, shifting nervously as he knocked on the door. He glanced around, his posture tense, like he was afraid of being watched. He knocked again, waited. No answer. He looked directly into the camera, his face full of worry. Then, he vanished. Not walked away, not stepped out of frame, just gone. 1 second, he was standing there. The next, the hallway was empty. I rewound the footage, played it again. Same thing. The man blinked out of existence. I frowned, checking the file metadata. The timestamp hadn't skipped. There was no corruption in the video. This wasn't an error. The footage was real. I needed to know more. I searched the police database and found the missing person report. The man's name was Kevin Morgan. He had disappeared in 2013. Last seen outside apartment 305. I was unsettled but intrigued. The police also sent me a second hard drive, labeled apartment 305, 2023. A recording from 10 years later. I hesitated before playing it. The footage loaded. Same hallway, same camera angle. The timestamp read yesterday. And at 11:47 p.m., someone walked into frame. My heart stopped. It was Kevin Morgan. Same clothes, same anxious posture, same worried look on his face. 10 years had passed, but he hadn't aged a day. I felt cold all over. This was impossible. I scrubbed through the footage, watching in stunned silence. Just like before, Kevin knocked on the door, looked around nervously. Then, just like before, he vanished, gone in a single frame. My skin crawled. How was this happening? I checked the case files again. Apartment 305 had been vacant for years. No tenants, no visitors. And yet, every night, the camera recorded motion detected at 11:47 p.m. I didn't want to keep watching, but I had to. I loaded the most recent footage. The video played. The hallway was empty. Then motion detected. But this time it wasn't Kevin. A dark figure stepped into frame. Tall, distorted. His body flickered like static struggling to take shape. It stood in front of apartment 305. And then, slowly, it turned to face the camera. I felt sick, because its face was mine. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. The figure standing in front of apartment 305, the one that had replaced Kevin Morgan, had my face. But it wasn't really me. His head twitched unnaturally, like a bad signal. Its eyes were too dark, as if the camera couldn't capture them. For a long, horrible moment, it just stood there, staring into the lens. Then the screen glitched. The timestamp skipped ahead by 1 second, and the figure was gone. I sat back, my heart pounding. My office felt smaller, the walls pressing in. I checked the file history again. Motion detected at 11:47 p.m. every night, for 10 years. And now, for the first time, Kevin was gone, replaced by something that looked like me. I didn't know what to do. Who would believe this? A missing person appearing a decade later, then being replaced by something else? I closed the files. I needed time to think. I barely slept that night. Every sound made my skin crawl. Then, at 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. A motion detection alert. But not from the apartment footage. From my home security camera. My stomach dropped. With shaking hands, I opened the app. The live feed loaded. It showed my front porch. And someone was standing there. It was me. Or something wearing my face. Same clothes. Same stance. But its head was slightly tilted, its body too stiff, too still. I wanted to believe it was a trick. A hacked feed. Then it moved. Slowly it raised one hand. And knocked. 3 times. Knock. 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 I jumped at the sound. It wasn't just on the video. It was real. Coming from my actual front door. I dropped my phone. My breath was ragged. My body refused to move. Then, my phone buzzed again. New notification. Motion detected, living room. My blood turned to ice. I wasn't in the living room. I was in my office. Something was inside. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. The notification on my phone stared back at me like a death sentence. Motion detected, living room. Something was inside my house. And I knew what it was. My office was at the far end of the house. The only way to the front door was through the living room. But now something was in there. I turned the volume up on my phone. The security camera had a mic. If someone was moving, I'd hear them. First, nothing. Then, a single slow footstep. The breath caught in my throat. Another step. The sound was wrong. Not soft like a sock or bare foot. It was heavy, deliberate, like a boot stepping directly onto the hardwood floor. But I wasn't wearing boots. I forced myself to open the camera app. The feed loaded slowly, like it didn't want to show me what was there. Then the image appeared. The living room looked normal. The couch, the coffee table, the TV, and standing directly beneath the camera, me. But it wasn't me. It was taller, its limbs too long, and its head, it was tilted completely sideways, resting against its own shoulder, like its neck had snapped. Turns to face me. The thing stood motionless, facing away from the camera. Then it turned. Not in a natural way. Its entire body rotated at once, like a puppet being twisted by invisible strings. It looked up directly into the camera lens. And then it smiled. Not a real smile. Not even a human one. It was too wide, stretching beyond the limits of its face. Then it spoke. Through the security feed. Through my phone speaker. Let me in. The voice was my own. But layered beneath it, there was something else. Something old. Something hungry. I dropped the phone. Then, a new notification. Motion detected office. My stomach dropped. I was in the office. I turned, heart hammering. The door was open, and someone was standing in the doorway. I don't remember much after that. I remember running. I remember throwing myself into my car, peeling out of the driveway. I remember never going back. But my security camera still records, even though I abandoned the house. And every night, at 11:47 p.m., I still get a notification. Motion detected apartment 305. I don't open it, because I know what it would show. A hallway, a door, and something wearing my face, waiting. My name is Andrew, and for the past few months, I've had the unsettling feeling that I'm not alone in my house. I live in a small, one-story home in a quiet neighborhood. It's nothing special, but it's mine. I should feel safe here, but I don't. Because every night, at exactly 3:47 a.m., I hear footsteps outside my window. At first, I convinced myself it was an animal. Maybe a stray cat or a raccoon wandering through my yard. But the sound was too steady, too deliberate. It started with soft, crunching steps in the grass, pacing back and forth near my bedroom window. Some nights, I swore I could hear breathing. Deep, slow inhales, just beyond the glass. I told myself it was my imagination, but after weeks of it happening every single night, I decided to prove to myself that nothing was there. I bought a small security camera and placed it on my windowsill, facing the backyard. If anything was moving around at night, the camera would catch it. The first night I set it up, I stayed awake until almost 3 a.m., but exhaustion finally won, and I passed out. When I woke up the next morning, my heart was racing with anticipation as I grabbed my phone to check the footage. For the first few hours, nothing happened. The yard was still, the trees swaying gently under the dim glow of the streetlights. Then, at 3:47 a.m., the camera detected motion. My breath caught in my throat as I tapped the notification, pulling up the video. Something stepped into the frame. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't even really a person. It was too tall, its limbs too long and thin. The figure moved slowly, almost gliding rather than walking. My hands went cold as I watched it creep closer to my window. It had no face, just a smooth, featureless void where its eyes and mouth should have been. I wanted to stop watching, to shut my phone off and pretend I hadn't seen it. But I couldn't. I was frozen, staring at the screen, unable to look away. The figure stopped just outside my window, and it stood there, watching. For 25 minutes, it didn't move. I could see the outline of its body shifting slightly in the night breeze, but it made no attempt to leave. It simply waited. And then, at 4:12 a.m., it did something that made my blood run cold. It turned to face the camera, and the screen went black. My stomach lurched. I scrubbed through the video, trying to see if it had just been a glitch, but the footage after 4:12 a.m. was gone. Corrupted. The file was damaged beyond repair. I ran outside in broad daylight, checking the ground beneath my window. The grass was untouched. No footprints. No bent blades of grass. No sign that anything had stood there. But I knew what I saw. I tried to go about my day as if nothing had happened, but the thought of nightfall made my skin crawl. I didn't want to sleep. I didn't want to be in that house alone. But when 3:47 a.m. rolled around, my phone buzzed again. Motion detected. Dread settled deep in my stomach as I opened the app. The live feed loaded slowly, as if the camera itself was hesitating to show me what was outside. But when the image appeared, I felt sick. The figure was back, standing closer. It was right up against the window now, its smooth, blank face nearly pressed against the glass. My entire body tensed. I was afraid to move, afraid to even breathe. I wasn't watching old footage anymore. This was happening right now. I wanted to turn on the lights, to scream, to run. But I just stared, my fingers gripping my phone so tightly I thought the screen might crack. And then, the figure lifted one hand, pressed its palm flat against the window, and slowly it started to tap. I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. My heart pounded violently in my chest. I couldn't take it anymore. I scrambled out of bed and grabbed a baseball bat from the closet before storming outside. The cold night air hit my skin as I stepped onto the lawn, my breath coming in short gasps. But the yard was empty. There was nothing there. No figure. No footprints. Just silence. I checked my phone again, but the live feed had frozen. The image on the screen showed the figure still standing at my window. But it wasn't real. I was outside. I was looking at the exact same spot, and there was nothing there. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night. The next day, I ripped the camera off the windowsill and threw it away. I convinced myself that if I stopped looking, it would stop showing up. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. Because last night, at 3:47 a.m., I woke up without knowing why. The house was silent. My phone was off. And then I heard it. A single, slow tap against the glass. I didn't look. I just pulled the covers over my head, squeezed my eyes shut, and prayed that when the sun came up, it would be gone. I don't check the windows anymore, because now I know. It's not outside. It's inside. I don't sleep much anymore. It started 3 nights ago when I woke up at 3:33 a.m. to the sound of knocking on my front door. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I live alone in a quiet neighborhood. No one comes by unannounced, especially not in the middle of the night. My first thought was that maybe someone had the wrong house, a drunk neighbor or a lost stranger. But something about it felt off. I grabbed my phone, heart pounding. I had a security camera installed on my front porch, linked to an app on my phone. When I opened the app, my stomach twisted. Motion detected, front door. The video loaded and I held my breath. A man stood on my porch. He was wearing a dark suit, the kind you'd expect at a funeral. He wasn't moving, wasn't knocking anymore. Just standing there, perfectly still. The porch light cast long shadows over his face, but I could see just enough. He was smiling, a small, tight-lipped grin. I felt a chill creep up my spine. I watched the screen, waiting for him to do something, say something, but he just stood there. Then, just as suddenly as he had appeared, the video glitched. For a split second, static filled the screen. And when the feed cleared, he was gone. Not walking away, not out of frame, just gone. I stared at the screen for a long time, my fingers shaking. Maybe the camera malfunctioned. Maybe I imagined the whole thing. But that didn't explain the knocking. I forced myself to go back to bed. But I didn't sleep. I just lay there in the dark, waiting. The next day, I tried to forget about it. Told myself it was a trick of the light, a camera glitch, a weird dream. Then the second night came. I was asleep until, once again, I woke up at exactly 3:33 a.m. And once again I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. My entire body tensed. I felt like a little kid again, too scared to move under the blankets. Slowly, I reached for my phone. Motion detected, front door. I swallowed hard and opened the app. The man was back, standing in the exact same spot, wearing the exact same suit. But this time he wasn't just standing there. He was closer to the camera. I could see his face now, and he was grinning wider. Too wide. A smile that stretched too far, like something that had never smiled before and was trying to figure out how. A feeling of pure dread settled in my chest. Then suddenly, he tilted his head. Just a small movement, like he knew I was watching. The screen glitched again. When the image cleared, he was gone. I barely slept the rest of the night. I told my neighbor, Mrs. Hensley, about it the next morning. She's lived here for over 30 years. If weird things were happening, she'd know. When I described the man, she went pale. "You need to leave," she whispered. I frowned. "What? Why?" She hesitated, glancing around like someone might overhear. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "Did you open the door?" I shook my head. Relief flickered across her face, but it was brief. "He knocks," she said. "3 times. Always at 3:33. And if you open the door." She didn't finish the sentence. I wanted to press her for answers, but she just shook her head and hurried inside, locking her door behind her. I felt sick. That night, I was too afraid to sleep. I sat in my living room, phone in hand, watching the security feed live. I told myself I wouldn't check the recording this time. I would watch him in real time. At exactly 3:33 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected, front door. I swallowed and opened the live feed. The man was there, standing still, grinning, and this time he lifted one hand. Slowly, he waved at the camera. I dropped my phone. Then, knock, knock, knock. I stopped breathing. The sound wasn't coming from my phone. It was coming from my actual front door. The knocking was louder this time, more insistent. And then, something whispered my name. Came from the other side of the door. "Lucas." I clamped a hand over my mouth, backing away from the entrance. My phone buzzed again. New notification, motion detected. Living room. My blood turned to ice. I was in the living room. I turned my head, slowly, stiffly, toward the hallway leading to my bedroom. My phone screen glitched. For a second, I saw something standing in the shadows. Something tall. Something grinning. Then, the screen cut to black, and I heard the softest whisper, "Let me in." I don't remember how long I stood there, staring into the dark hallway. My phone was still buzzing in my hand, but I couldn't bring myself to look at the screen again. The whisper, it had been right next to me. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't breathing. I just ran. I grabbed my keys, sprinted out the back door, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to get as far away from my house as possible. I ended up at my friend Jeremy's apartment across town. It was nearly 4 a.m. when I banged on his door like a madman. When he finally opened it, his face was groggy and annoyed until he saw mine. "Dude, what the hell happened to you?" he asked. I pushed past him, slammed the door shut, and locked every bolt. I didn't sleep that night. Jeremy kept asking me what was wrong, but I couldn't explain it. Because how do you tell someone that a man who looks like a corpse in a suit is stalking you through your security camera? That night, I turned my phone off. I didn't want to see another motion detection alert. I didn't want to know if he had followed me. The next morning, I convinced myself it was over. That whatever was happening was tied to my house. I stayed at Jeremy's, scrolling through job listings in different cities. I was seriously considering leaving town. Then, around 3 a.m., Jeremy's phone buzzed. He frowned, picked it up, and glanced at the screen. "Hey, Lucas," he muttered. "Why the hell are you standing outside?" My stomach dropped. Jeremy turned the phone around to show me. Motion detected, front door. The security feed showed a figure standing outside his apartment. A man in a suit. Jeremy frowned. "Dude, is this some kind of prank?" I shook my head, my body frozen in terror. Then Jeremy zoomed in. I felt bile rise in my throat, because it wasn't just a man in a suit. It was me, but my skin was too pale, and I was smiling too wide. Then, the figure on the screen lifted a hand and knocked. Jeremy jumped at the sound, his real front door shaking under the impact. We stared at each other in complete horror. Then, The phone glitched. The video cut out. Jeremy ran to the peephole, then immediately stumbled backward, his face drained of color. "Lucas," he whispered. "There's nothing there." I felt cold all over. I knew what he meant. If he opened the door, the porch would be empty. The same way my camera never caught him leaving. Because he doesn't leave. He just stops existing. Until the next night. I didn't stay in the apartment. I didn't go back to my house. I booked a motel outside of town. I left my phone turned off, locked the door, and sat in the chair by the window with my baseball bat. But at 3:33 a.m., something woke me up. Not knocking. Something else. A voice. Right outside the window. Soft. Gentle. "Lucas, let me in." My entire body locked up. The curtains were shut. The room was dark except for the dim red glow of the alarm clock. I told myself not to look. I didn't want to see. Then the voice came again. Closer this time. Right on the other side of the glass. "It's cold out here, Lucas. Let me in." I clenched my eyes shut, my hands digging into my thighs. "Don't look. Don't look. Don't look." Then, knock, knock, knock. The sound came from the window. I couldn't stop myself. I opened my eyes. I stared at the curtain, heart hammering. The fabric bulged outward, like something was pressing its face against it. I could see the outline of a head, a wide, twisted grin stretching too far. I choked on a breath, barely holding back a scream. Then my phone, which had been turned off, buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't want to look. I had to look. The screen was on. A single notification flashing. Motion detected, window. I lunged forward and ripped the curtains open, but there was nothing there. The knocking had stopped. The voice was gone. But when I turned back to my phone, the security feed was still live. The screen showed me standing at the window, grinning. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the screen. The security feed was still running. The image showed my motel window, and standing outside, looking in, was me. Not the real me, something else. Its grin was impossibly wide, stretching beyond the limits of its face. Its eyes were hollow, empty pits. The skin was too pale, its body too still. Then, on the feed, the fake me lifted one hand. And it knocked. 3 slow, deliberate times. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came from the real window. I dropped my phone. My breath hitched. My muscles locked in terror. It wasn't possible. There was nothing there. But I had heard it. And now, in the silence, I could hear something else. Breathing. Slow. Deep. Right on the other side of the glass. I backed away, my entire body trembling. Then the phone buzzed again. Motion detected, inside room. I nearly collapsed. Inside. Inside. I forced myself to turn around. There was nothing there. The room was empty. The door was locked. But the phone was still buzzing. I looked back at the screen. The security feed was still on. But the camera angle had changed. Now it wasn't showing the window. It was showing the back of my head. Like something was standing right behind me. I felt the cold rush of breath against my neck. Then a whisper. "Let me in." I don't remember running. I don't remember how I got outside. The next thing I knew, I was in my car, speeding down the highway, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel. I drove until morning. I didn't stop until I was 3 towns away. When I finally pulled into a gas station, my phone was still buzzing in the passenger seat. Another notification. Motion detected, front door. But I had no front door. I had left my house behind. I had left everything behind. I picked up the phone with trembling hands and forced myself to check the feed. The screen flickered. Then the image appeared. Not my house. Not my motel. But the gas station parking lot. And standing in the middle of the empty lot, right behind my car, was the man in the suit. He wasn't smiling anymore. But I was. The reflection in my windshield. I was grinning. And then, slowly, I lifted my own hand, and I knocked.